Order, order. Welcome to the Public Accounts Committee on Thursday the 26th of March 2026. Before I start, I want to be clear that what has happened with the transfer and the early administration of the Civil Service Pension Scheme by Capita is unacceptable. Notwithstanding this, you are appearing here today as you did on the 12th of February, and we thank you very much for that. It has not been difficult to secure your appearance. You've been forthcoming, and some of your information we've requested from you, and you are facing up to your responsibilities, so we thank you for that. That having been said, you would expect our scrutiny will be robust and challenging but fair today. We must remember that the Cabinet Office and my CSP, respectively, are also responsible for the scheme and the state that it is currently in. Last month we heard evidence from you both about the ongoing issues with the scheme. You told us that the previous administrator, my CSP, had left you with a large backlog of outstanding work, the size and complexity of which was unexpected and the main reason for service failings. We've also learnt through correspondence that hardship loans have been arranged to support civil servants who have been left in financial difficulty as a result of failings in the administration of the scheme. So today we'll be looking further to determine what action you are taking to address the issues of retiring civil servants who have been experiencing problems in accessing their pensions. Many of these scheme members have been left struggling to make ends meet, causing them difficult ongoing stress and anxiety. I would like to sincerely thank every individual who has taken the time to write to this committee on this issue, that it has greatly helped our scrutiny of the whole matter. Whilst we cannot assist with individual cases, our committee is committed to the ongoing scrutiny of this failing contract, and today we hope to get further answers from you both about what is being done to put things right. So without any further ado, Richard Holroyd, would you like to please just introduce yourself, and then Chris Clements to do the same, please.
Good morning. My name is Richard Holroyd. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Capita's Public Service Division.
My name is Chris Clements. I'm the Managing Director of Capita Pension Solutions.
Thank you both very much. And before I move on, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our guest member for this session, Charlotte Kane, who joins us today from the PACAC Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee, who have also been doing quite a lot of work on this matter, including having Cat Little before them recently. So perhaps I could start to you, Richard, and I'm really anxious to explore, as we did in the last committee, what you knew and what you were doing about it before the 1st of December. Because Cat Little, in her latest letter, which we did publish yesterday, and I assume you've seen, makes it very clear. It says, both the Cabinet Office and Capita knew that the volume of work in progress transferred by my CSP would exceed the assumed 37,000 case, and Capita was specifically instructed in July 2025 to prepare for volumes of up to 100,000 cases. So with that information, I mean, firstly, in your view, is that correct?
Could I start with an apology? Because I think
yes,
it's important to do that above all else. I came to this committee in the 12th of February, and I apologise then for the quality of the service being delivered to the members of the Civil Service Pension Scheme. I reiterate that apology. The standard of service, whilst improving, and I'll cover some of that in a moment, is still not where either they deserve to have the service, particularly after the length of service in service of this country, but also the standard that we aspire to and should be delivering. So we do apologise. It remains the number one priority for Capita PLC to restore service. And so, Geoffrey, just before I answer in more detail the question about what we knew and what we didn't know, I just wanted to focus for a moment on the stabilisation of the service that is ongoing right now. So since the last session, we have been focused on stabilising the service and reducing the backlog cases. Since the 1st of December, we have cleared and closed 145,000 cases. Over the past month, we've cleared the most acute member risks. Death in service and ill health processing are back to normal levels, with priority cases triaged daily with our HMRC and civil service colleagues. and routed for immediate action where necessary. Lump sums are back on track, and we're working through remaining retirement cases to return to steady state. Contact centre performance has returned to normal levels, with call answer times and service levels improving markedly. We will maintain surge cover to keep performance stable as the underlying volumes ease. We have cleared the unread emails, all 15,000 that we inherited, and I misspoke at the last committee, and I think we've corrected it since. It was 15,000, not 16,000 emails. And we've finalised the allocation of the remaining items into member records. The surge capacity that we provided, and HMRC, with the second permanent secretary from HMRC leading it, continues in place, clearing front, middle and back office processes. We have a clear recovery plan that is jointly signed off and agreed with the Cabinet Office to restore the contractual performance levels and to clear the backlog. So whilst challenges remain, we're seeing progress and expect services to improve in the coming months.
Okay.
The context that you referred to of the backlog, and Chris will take us through some detail. And I have read the letter that came from the Permanent Secretary of the Cabinet Office, and we do recognise the number of 100,000 that was given in May. Those numbers also varied, and we have that in very detailed lists. But the number was certainly higher than the 37,000 in the initial backlog that we expected. The issue is about the context of the backlog and the age of the cases and the complexity of the cases. And I'm sure the committee will understand that a case that is about a change of address is a 15-minute job to sort out, whereas a death in service or a complex scheme where somebody has split service could take up to 15 hours. And it was the depth and context of the cases that we are inheriting. And we inherited several cases, in fact, several hundred cases, which have been highly complex and outstanding for some time. So, Chris, would you like to?
So, I thank you, and I also would like to just add my apology to any member who's had to wait longer than is reasonable to expect. The lengths of waits are a key part of the context of the backlog we inherited. So we've discussed 89,000 cases inherited on the 1st of December. 13,000 of those had been waiting for more than a year. So to give you some context and to extract, as I discussed with you at my previous appearance, I run 250 pension schemes across public and private sector. And when we were told of the 100,000 number referred to in Kat's letter, we planned upon it being what I would call a normal but large work in progress. So what that means is that a normal work in progress would be 4 or 5 days of work for the operation. A large work in progress may be 2 or 3 weeks of work, and you work through that backlog, but no individual case would be older than maybe a month. And you would do the first in first so that you would keep that churning through. And that's what we planned on, and that's the resource that we scaled up. And if you remember, we recruited 180 additional staff to deal with that. However, when we then received the detail on taking over, and we started to open the cases and see the aging within the cases, we realised, when combined with the calls we were receiving, we realised these were much, much older. And when you get an old case, the level of emotion attached to that case and the speed you have to deal with it is much higher. So we surged so that we could deal with the cases faster rather than dealing with them on a first in, first out churn basis. We had to deal with these 13,000 very old cases. On that first week of operation, we were expecting 7,000 or 8,000 phone calls. We received 25,000 phone calls. Over 17% of those calls told us that they had been told to go away and call back when Capita had taken over. So we were not just experiencing the official cases, but we were experiencing them were more complex and older, and therefore have a higher emotional content for the member because they've been waiting so long. But also there were cases that were unrecorded because they'd called previously and been told to call back. So we were it is not just the absolute number of cases, it was the nature and content.
Okay, well, thank you both for your apology. I'm sure that those listening to this hearing will appreciate that, or they'd appreciate it more if we get their problems sorted out. In the very almost next line to the line I quoted, in Cat Little's letter at the top of the page 2, it says Capita were required to carry out a discovery phase with the previous provider where they had the opportunity to ask questions about all aspects of the work in progress and prepare for taking over service. Now, we did cover this in the last committee, and presumably when you started to do that discovery phase, you would be asking questions in writing, so there will be a written trail as to what you did ask and what you didn't ask. But for the purposes of just now, can you briefly tell us what you did ask and what you did find? Because all very well saying that and I've written it down, the context, age and complexity of cases were larger than you expected. But if you'd done the discovery phase, I thought you might have discovered some of that.
So we did. We asked in writing for the details of not just the quantity, but the nature, the age, and the description of the cases. We were given a number of different downloads, a number of different lists, and each of those lists contained different information, none of which was exactly what we asked for, and we continued to go back and ask for additional information. But it was not until we saw the actual cases at Go Live did we see the true age of what was there. And we wrote to the Cabinet Office on the 10th of December, informing them that what we had discovered in the real backlog was different to that had been described to us, and was going to mean that we had to surge additional staff and do additional measures to deal with it.
Nevertheless, surely that discovery phase would have told you, that, I mean, you say, Chris, you quote all those huge number of pension schemes that you run, and you made some standard assumptions, one of which you were going to take over 37,500, but you had been warned it was 100,000. Even from, you might have got slightly different information, but even from the information you got, surely it must have began to, with all your experience, tell you that this is something seriously had gone wrong here, and it was going to need serious operations with the surge staff and everything else to put it right.
Absolutely, and so we took all of the information that we'd received, the quantity of cases. We took the assumption that it was a normal but large work in progress, i.e. they were current cases being worked on, not cases that had been left for a long time. And we built a model to work out the exact staffing we would need to deal with that in a time frame that made sense, plus the staffing we would need to deal with the onboarding challenge. That is why when we transferred 330 staff from ICSP, we hired an additional 180 staff on Go Live. That modelling and that plan assumed that those cases were a normal kind of work in progress where we would just be able to work through them as we went, because of the fact that they were aged in a way that they were much more urgent than they would be if they were only 15 or 20 days old, was why we had to bring in the surge staff. And in addition, we had not expected for the pent-up demand of people who had been told to call back and people who had not been submitting a case because they knew that the service was in distress. And it was those pent-up demands plus the work in progress, plus the age, which meant that our extra 180 weren't sufficient, and we had to surge the additional staff.
I'm not satisfied that I still understand the full complexity of what you knew and what you didn't know, and we may well come back to that. But I'm very anxious to get on to present cases, but I do have one more fundamental question. Knowing all of what you knew, it does seem that your IT systems weren't up and running at all on the 1st of December, or if they were were they nearly tailored to reach the level of cases and complexity that you've got? And Cat Little says you didn't deliver the full levels of IT automation and portal for functionality at Go Live on the 1st of December.
So in conjunction with the Cabinet Office before Go Live, we agreed to split the functionality between the 1st of December and the end of March. So there are 2 releases of functionality, 1st of December and the end of March. The combined releases are then the full functionality that was promised as part of the procurement. The functionality that we went live with on the 1st of December was everything needed to administer a pension scheme. What happened then is that we had some teething problems and some difficulties with scaling and with the technology and with the line availability. They were quickly rectified and we worked through, but there are features that are now, we are successfully going live with or are going live with this weekend to provide all of the original features in the original plan, and that split of the 1st December and the end of March was agreed with Cabinet Office before go live.
Okay, well, we'll come onto some of that in a minute. So I think we now sort of move, perhaps for the moment anyway, from the past to the present, and I'm going to bring in Clive Betts, please.
Can you just tell us what the current state of play is with work in progress, and not just overall numbers, but how many have been waiting for more than a month, more than 3 months?
Yeah, certainly, we've got lots of data we'll take you through.
So if I may, I thought I would start with member inquiries. So we've now answered over 100,000 phone calls since we took live. In the last 2 weeks, all of the priority calls, the average waiting time has been less than 20 seconds. For all the calls, it's been less than 100 seconds. We've now had...
Also enter in a minute, I think, some more questions about the number of cases.
Okay, the number of cases. So on the number of cases, so of the 89,000 cases we inherited, as we promised, we have focused on ensuring that everyone got their lump sums who had a quote. We have paid 7,782 lump sums. 165 of those lump sums have been waiting for more than a year at the 1st of December. We have dealt with all of the death in service and ill health, as we discussed. In totality, there are 140,000 open cases today. 40,000 of those are general inquiries, which we have deprioritised, such as simple amendments to address or amendments to records, so that we can focus on getting out the payments. We have also made sure that we have not closed cases where we have got someone a first payment. So instead of we've made sure every single person who is able to get us an initial payment got an initial payment, and then paused the case and not closed it, to then go back, and we've written to them to explain this, and go back and put their normal pension in receipt in April. So of the 140,000 that are open, 40 are general inquiries that we're not looking at. There are then around 15,000 that are part worked on. And then the rest are lower priority cases that we are focused on those priority cases first.
Right. Let's have a look at one or two individual cases, shall we? Because talking to the Civil Service Pensioners Alliance, and I pay great credit to them for the work they've done here in being the port of call for many very distressed people who just don't know where to turn, and they're getting sensible, proper advice from them, which is really helpful. Now, you're talking about priority cases and part dealing with it. People only got part of the money, they're still likely to be in hardship. And now, except the case I'm going to quote to you, are going back prior to you taking over with my CSP, but they're still people's...
Yeah.
And this is what matters at the end of it. We're talking about individuals, not having money to live off. So James Fenney is a solicitor up in Darlington, Ministry of Justice. Tragically, in October, he was given an end-of-life prognosis. So obviously, he hadn't got that long to live and wanted his pension for the rest of his remaining part of his life. He didn't get any money until you took over, but then he finally got some payments for his pension going back in November and December on the 10th of February. So you might think you dealt with that one quickly. Right, he got payments then. Why haven't you then paid for January and February? He's struggling. He hasn't got the money. He's having to borrow off family and friends. And he keeps phoning up, and all he gets told is the case will be escalated. I mean, that's a phrase that's quite often used on your call centres. We may come back to that. Escalated. Well, I don't know who's been escalated to, because the escalation hasn't worked. He still hasn't got those pension payments.
He's dying.
So, as I said, I'm very sorry for everyone who's waiting and everyone who's waiting for pensions that they have earned. You'll understand that it's very difficult for me to comment on a very specific case here, and we will write to you regarding the specific details. But as your question highlights, what we are doing is ensuring that everyone that we can gets a lump sum and is able to access the hardship loans, and we are now getting those people into receipt of their normal payments. And in April, we will make sure that all of those pensioners who are in a situation like you've described are then in receipt of their recurring normal payment. By the end of April, everyone will be.
That's another month this man's going to have to wait without his pension.
He's dying.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I think a bit quicker than that in this case.
Absolutely, we will look into this case in detail.
Right. Mark?
Just stop you there, Clay. When you appeared before us last, you differentiated the severity of cases, and the most severe cases were those people who told you that they were either waiting for a lump sum payment, somebody had died, or somebody who was in, sadly, the latter stages of life. So that was back in February. Why weren't these sort of cases picked up?
Well, I think, as Chris is demonstrating, and I think in the case you've described, we've picked up the initial payment, and that payment's been made. And this is a tragic case, which we recognise completely, and it's not an acceptable service. But then we are into, once we've paid that initial payment, they then go into the list with all the others in the same position, where we're therefore moving through that as fast as we can to make those payments. Your point is totally accepted, which is that process is not fast enough. And we are putting all the resources we can to clearing as many of those as we possibly can. And we are in receipt of similar emails, and I know it's a very frustrating response from the frontline team, which says we're escalating it, and they do, and we are on a daily basis clearing off those cases. And this is where I referred to the complexity of some of those cases. And some of those cases, to work out the final lump sum that is due payment is quite complex, because there's split service, there's length of service, there are requirements to get from employers data so that can be fed in. So that's the difficulty of this. And I would point out that with the support of the Second Permanent Secretary, Angela MacDonald, we've been working really hard with those departments of state to help get that information as fast as we can and turn it around.
Okay. Looks very complicated. This man's had 2 pension payments, so you've already done the calculations.
Exactly.
It's not difficult to pay him again, is it, for the next 2 months, really? And if we talk about priority cases, what's more priority than this case?
I agree, without being able to see the precise details of the so I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that
see them when you go back to the office
and we absolutely will.
These payments have been made. Sorry,
we absolutely will.
Right, widows' pensions. They apparently aren't a priority, not in the list that you've given us. Had 2 cases here, very similar. Mrs. Solansky and Virginia West. Both had their husbands' partners who died, and they became entitled to a widow's pension in October. Again, before you took over, I accept. Since then, numerous telephone calls, long wait times, as we all know, trying to find out what's happening. Now, we are now in March. They were entitled to a pension from last October, and no payments been made. 2 widow ladies struggling financially. Again, these apparently are not a priority either, are they?
So they are, and again, we apologise to everybody who's had to wait. They are a priority, and again, if you pass us those details, we'll look into those specific cases. We are getting all of the widow pensions and other bereavement payments transacted as fast as possible.
What's as fast as possible mean?
So they,
Date, please, deadline?
They will be by the end of April.
End of April. But you can look at cases more quickly, can you? When they've been outstanding since October last year.
We have, yes, and there are cases that have been outstanding even longer than that, but we will pass us those and we will look at them.
I mean, you say you can't talk about individual cases. Now, I get you haven't got that immediate information, but what the Civil Service Pension Alliance is saying to me is these are just examples of similar cases that are coming over and over again to them, and perhaps some people don't want to have their name read out in public and feel difficult about doing that. So these are people who are prepared to have their names in very difficult circumstances read out to you because they are so frustrated, and know other people are as well.
And again, absolutely. And we see, because we read the emails and the escalations on a daily basis. So we receive them personally, and I read all of them. I am responding personally to each of those. We are putting them into the escalation process. What we're talking about here, and it goes back to the piece about what we inherited, the volumes are large. We are deprioritising all the things that are one might describe as still important but administrative issues. I receive written complaints about people asking for their tax code to be adjusted, and what we're doing is saying that's very important to you, we recognise that, but actually what we are trying to do right now is pay people who have suffered bereavement and make sure that we're putting those to the top of the
Why were these never mentioned as a priority before? Widows were never mentioned as a priority.
I think we mentioned under the category of bereavements, and that's the way we understand that category. So somebody who is bereaved is entitled to a pension, and that has been in the priority list.
Okay. So priorities take 5 months not to get resolved.
I think, and again, I can't dispute the point. It is taking 5 months. It shouldn't take 5 months. The cases that you're reading out, we recognise that were in the backlog. We've met some of the people outside today who are in a similar position, and we've been listening to them. We absolutely hear it. We are driving as hard as we can. The volume of cases that we're able to process is increasing on a daily basis.
They're all going to get paid, all these bereavement cases, by the end of April.
That is the plan right now.
I say what the plan was.
Well, you can imagine we've committed to the plan, and therefore we have a plan that's running and working. And I think, as the permanent secretary, Kat Little, says in her letter, that joint plan with the Civil Service Cabinet Office is working. It's being done in sprints. Each of those sprints is landing exactly the outcomes that we set out at in the first place, and it continues to deliver.
I'll give you one more case, if I could, Chair.
Yes, of course.
Because there's again another group of people, MCLoud cases. Now, I know you aren't taking on board new MCLoud cases, I think it was part of the agreement, but there were some that were outstanding from my CSP, and cases where they'd actually applied for and been accepted in terms of their MCLoud situation before you took over. This is a case of Christopher Whitman, who had his case accepted. The forms were sent in, been acknowledged, and the issue of immediate choice option forms then was suspended. But his case is already in the system. Nothing. And that was back in August to receive confirmation that the option form had been received.
So as we said in our written response to you, and as we said, the entire functioning of the service, because we have focused on the highest priority cases as we agreed with the Cabinet Office and continued down, it will not be until June that the entire service is back into normal service. The MCLoud cases and other such cases, they are in that backlog, in that inherited case list that we are burning. We are going through and doing every one of those cases in the priority order we agreed with the Cabinet Office.
Right. So that's 8 months in receiving his remedy lump sum and adjustment to pension. So we're talking about lump sums. 8 months here.
Yes, the prioritisation of the cases. It is done in conjunction with the Cabinet Office, and I'm not saying it's a Cabinet Office decision. We've done it in partnership, and we're prioritising on that basis. So in some cases, people who are have an outstanding MCLoud remedy are lower down the priority order than the bereavement cases, the death in service cases, and the hardship cases.
So apparently there are 400 cases, like Mr. Whitman's, which are on hold, though they don't know what that means. They've been told it's work in progress.
Which it is.
Well, it seems as though it's no work in progress at this stage on these schemes.
Forgive me, work in progress is referring to cases that have been opened, and which that one clearly has, and are therefore not yet closed. That would
basically
the
nothing's
technical term. Sorry?
Not doing anything with these cases at present.
As I said a moment ago, we are prioritising.
I didn't ask about the other cases, about these cases. You're not doing anything with them.
So if they are already in receipt of a pension and already receipt of money, we are prioritising those people who have waited years to have got nothing first, as agreed.
So cases like Mr. Whitman's, you're doing nothing with them. So just he knows, at least let's be honest with you.
Well, from the detail you're giving us right now, I think, and from the prioritisation, the answer is I don't think we are prioritising that case through right now, because from the details you provided, he is in receipt of a pension.
So you're doing, look, the language seems to get changed. Your idea of not prioritising actually means you're doing nothing with it.
Yes.
Okay. So it'll be June before these cases are dealt with.
So we will continue to...
These cases will be processed by June.
By June, we will be into normal service.
Can we have a straight answer? Will these cases be prioritised and dealt with by June?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. During that discourse, Richard, you said that you are answering cases on a daily basis that have been escalated to you. That's presumably after Chris's team has gone through the whole lot. How many are escalated to you each day?
It varies. Sometimes it's 2 cases, sometimes it's 4 cases. They don't, by the way, go through others first. The members of the Civil Service Pension Scheme have quite rightly identified that an email address for the CEO to write to, and therefore they're often writing direct to me. Usually they have been through our front office team first, and therefore they write directly to me as an escalation. Some have been through others too, and we go through regular reviews of the triage to see where we are. This, as I think we've been demonstrating, is about the sheer volume, and Chris gave you the volume of the number of cases that we have that are in waiting to be dealt with or are being dealt with. I'm trying not to use technical terms like work in progress, but that's where we are.
It doesn't seem that those 2 is very much, considering these really serious cases that Clive has outlined here that are out there, that some of which are being dealt with partially and some are not.
So if I may...
Just before you answer that question, presumably you're receiving data on a daily basis on all of these categories.
Yes, we are.
No, yeah, no, not we, you.
Yes, I get a copy of the daily dashboard for all of the performance right across from calls, the speed of answering a call centre to wait times to cases being done. But just I'm going to just correct. You asked me how many I'm getting now. It's 2 to 4 a day. Previously, back in January, I was getting many more than that. And
what does that mean, many more?
So some days I was getting 8 to 10 cases a day. Now, as I say, the members of the Civil Service Pension Scheme understand, and they are as aware of how processes you use as good professionals would be. So I recognise they're writing to me, they're writing to the group CEO, they're writing to Chris as the managing director. So the ones that land with me personally aren't necessarily reflective of a trend. I'm referring to the fact that I see some directly because they write to me directly.
It still doesn't seem a lot when there's just all these really, really serious cases out there. I mean, between 2 and 8, I would have, given the numbers that are out there and the numbers you've given us, I would have expected you'd be seeing many more, even filtered by Chris's department.
I think perhaps, as I say, if we were to give you the numbers that we are getting of escalations and complaints, that would give you a better feel as opposed to ones coming to me directly.
Yeah, perhaps we have a note of the numbers of complaints you're getting every day and the trends on all of this.
Yes, we have all that, but
we'd like to see that.
Yeah.
And Dixon, please.
Thank you. And before I should just declare a conflict of interest that I do have a small civil service pension from the time I worked at the Department of Health. I just really want to... you ran through a lot of figures at the top of the session about what you're dealing with and so on. Obviously, one of our really significant concerns that was previously raised back in February was that there were 8,500 members, according to the Cabinet Office, who'd retired but not received either any or their full pension entitlement. Can you just clarify how many of those are still waiting?
So we have paid out 7,782 lump sums. There are 860 people whom we have written back to the member or the department to ask for additional information because we don't currently have enough information to pay them a lump sum. And we are now moving the people who've had the lump sum into retirement as we've just discussed.
Do you think there's any chance that that's an underestimate? I mean, Clive's given some very clear cases. I've got my own constituents, somebody who's been waiting, and these are the cases you described as more aged and complex than you were expecting, who've been trying to access pensions since May 2025. So again, I realise this is before you took on. And had poor experiences being cut off trying to contact your service. The last contact they had with my CSP was that they were given an incorrect CSP quote and they've never been issued with a new one. Is that sort of case in the ones that you still have remaining, or is there a sort of iceberg below this tip of 8,000 people who you were aware of, who may be still sitting there and not even in your system?
They are in the system, so there are people who have requested a quote, whom we are getting to the quotes, and once they've got a quote, they'll then be put in for the lump sum. The hardship program is available to those people. The quotes, we are currently working through those quotes that we had inherited and making sure that all of those people in that situation get their quote.
How many of those additionally do you think there are?
So we have issued 2,500 quotes for people who had asked for a quote beforehand, and there is around another 5,000 quotes. But many of those quotes, they may now no longer be valid because that person did or didn't retire or has changed their minds, or they may have requested more than one quote. So there will not be that many individuals in that number. That's just how many quotes there are on the system for us to process.
Okay, so my constituent's been waiting since May 2025. They cannot even get through to you. So they are due a quote. How confident can we be that they're in the 5,000, and when are they going to receive this updated quote or a request for more information? They haven't heard anything.
The call centre is now fully functioning and answering the calls. So if they called and asked, they would get that information, and if they register for the portal, then they will also be able to access the information. But of course, if you pass me their details, I will look at their case personally.
I can, and that is part of the problem, is that they get past saying set up an account, go online, that they can't do that, then they call and they get switched between the two. So anyway, I won't go any further, but there is clearly, in addition to the sort of 8,500, which it seems, you've dealt with the majority, I think 860 remaining, but you're effectively saying, below the surface, there are potentially up to 5,000 quotes outstanding where people, they could be quite historic cases. Yes. Where they have not even received a quote and therefore are not even in the system to be getting payments in April, June, or whenever you get back on track. Right. So when you say, you expect everyone to receive their full pension entitlements and be up to this sort of normal thing by June, does that include this backlog of an extra 5,000 that I've just sort of heard of now?
So, but to be clear, and sorry for trying to be clear, we will be in a normal service whereby any task that we're asked to do or any step we're asked to take will be taken in the normal agreed timeline. Some of these journeys of getting into retirement, as you've just described, are very complicated and take a large number of steps. So you will, but when we're in normal service, if you ask for a quote, you will receive a quote in the right number of days. If you ask to be retired, you will get your payment within the right number of days. So we'll be able to put you through that process at the correct speed.
For new people, it'll sort of fit.
And if
so what about these people?
If they're halfway through the process, we will be able to take them through the remaining steps of that process at the normal speed.
Right.
But as we go through these, and this is when I talked about part closing cases earlier, when we're going through, as we're trying to find these people who have been stuck for a long time, maybe halfway through a process, getting them some money as fast as possible, and then getting them through the rest of the steps. And these steps are all about making sure that the very complicated rules of the scheme are followed and that everyone gets all the money that they deserve for their service in the civil service. So we are trying to do both, get the service back into a stage where every step can be done in the correct timeline, but also make sure that these people who've waited a long time to get halfway through their journey, or whatever percentage through the journey they are, get them some money as fast as possible.
Right, so I do, just because I think it slightly goes, I feel like there's a contradiction, Chair, slightly in the responses. That does not sound like these cases, and I have a MCLoud case similar to the one that Clive put forward, that they're going to get their payments by June, they're just going to have a normal level of service by June.
I think it's worth differentiating at this point, because I accept it sounds confusing. So by the end of June, we will have this service running normally. So that would mean a normal level of work in progress. The intention is to have cleared this backlog, because we're clearly getting new cases in right now, and because we're prioritising complex then old. So the complex cases and the ones with high priority, the bereavements we've been talking about, etc., we are eating our way through. Then to get to the people who quite rightly are very upset with us because we're not getting to their case because they're not quite at the top of the priority list, we're eating through them. And then when we get to the end of June, we should be at the point where we have a normal work in progress. As Chris has referenced, this is a very complex scheme with lots of members with split service, lots of members who've worked in different departments of state. And therefore, when we compile information in order to give a quote, we have to go to those departments of state to get information. So we need to get more information from the member because we have the scheme details. We then work with the Department of State to get the rest of the details that we require in order to provide a quote. Now, the importance of the working, literally hand in glove with the team led by Angela MacDonald, is so important to help us speed that process through with the various departments of state and to clarify and simplify the processes. So since we were last here, we've launched another set of functionality. So now we have an ability that's just gone live for the first time ever. Those people who have what we call split pensions, so they had split service, will be able to see live on a portal their two pensions and bring them together to get a quote. Now that's just gone live because that's never been available before. They could only ever see one pension number, then they had to go through a manual process to get the other one. Now that again is helping us clear through some of the complex elements of the backlog. The Track My Case process has gone live. It has basic functionality in it, but it is able for people to see where they are in the process. Has their case been opened? Is it being worked on? Is it being closed? So as the Permanent Secretary of the Cabinet Office referred to earlier, we agreed a level of functionality that we would go live with. There had some teething problems in that.
Before.
We've heard that before. But I think it's just important to note we are chewing through faster and faster.
We've got a lot to cover, so are we done, Anna?
Yeah, I just observed that the complexity he describes should be usual business. That's nothing to do with the handover from my CSP. That's just how civil service pensions work. But Yeah, fine.
Okay. Charlotte, please. We're very pleased to have you as a guest from the Backlog Committee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for letting me guest today. I need to declare an interest. I'm also a civil service pensioner, a retired member of the FTA, and indeed a member of the Civil Service Pensioners Alliance. So my first group of questions is about the telephone answering service, because we've heard of the problems people are having, so inevitably they're trying to ring to find out what's going on. Mr. Clements, at the last session you said you'd be meeting the service level expectations of answering 80% of calls within 30 seconds by the end of February. Have you achieved this?
So in the last 2 weeks, we've answered 72% of calls within 30 seconds. So we have not achieved 80%, but that 72% is on an upward trajectory. And 3 out of 5 days, we achieved the 80%.
So you said the average wait time for people with a general query, not one of your priorities, is less than 100 seconds.
The average wait time for all calls is 101 seconds.
Right. And the wait time, is that from when, because it starts with a sort of, if your call is about X, press number one, is that 100 seconds from when they get through to that, or from when they're speaking to a person? It's from when they finished entering the option to when they speak to a person. So it's 100 seconds to speaking to a person? Yes. And for the higher priority lines, it's less under than 20 seconds. Correct. Before they speak to a person. Correct. And are you also measuring how many calls are dropped? We are. We are running in the high 90s. Most days it's 98% answer rate, which is normal for a call centre of this nature.
So that's calls answered. So
it's a percentage. So the calls dropped is 2% or less. But once somebody is answered, are any of those calls dropped partway through the call? Do you measure that? So partway through the call? Yeah. We do measure that, but I don't have that in front of me, but I can write to you with that figure. So this when someone's already answered and then the call cuts. Yeah, they're speaking to a person and then the call gets cut off. So yes, we do measure that, but I do not have that information in front of me. Right. It would be interesting to see that and to see the trend. The suspicious person in me when you have a KPI is that there's a temptation to drop calls so that you can answer calls within the no absolutely like that would never we would not ever do that or have a policy of doing that. So if there's a technical reason or the mobile phone signal or there is some problem, it would drop, and that's why we measure it, but it would never have a policy or to do that. That would not be the way to run a call centre.
I'm not suggesting there would be a policy, but it is a behavioural thing that has been found on lots of other KPIs.
Yes, but prior to working at Capita, I worked in utilities with large call centres there, and I understand what you're describing. There is no incentive here whatsoever for our staff to do that. The incentive is the other way round, which is to keep the caller on the line and therefore resolve the case. And one of the things that I have to call out about the team that we inherited from my CSP on TUPE are domain experts with huge passion for this subject. And when we go and sit with them, I mean, their knowledge is superb, but also their commitment to the pensioners is huge. So it's just not but we'll give you the detail.
That is good to hear, but I would nevertheless like to see the figures. As you know, at PACAC there was discussion of insensitive call handling. I understand from media that you consider that particular case that was raised was during my CSP rather than Capita. But could you talk us through the sort of training you're giving people to make sure they're handling these cases? Because as we've heard, some of them must be in a very stressed state.
I'm going to just take the first part of the question. We actually, as a result of getting the detail on that case, listened to the tapes. So as far as we know and we believe, that those words weren't used. Now that's not suggesting that the person making or made the complaint didn't hear those, but we can't find that, and we've listened through those tapes. And certainly that wouldn't be acceptable. I go back to it's the same people that transferred across, and certainly having spent time with them, it's not in their nature. Their passion for what they do and their belief in the process is huge. But Chris, do you want to?
Yeah, so first of all, any time that we receive any complaint around the content of a call, we listen back to those calls and we look for lessons learnt. And those lessons learnt are in two types. So one is specific lessons learnt by the handler who said something or the way they said it, but also then lessons learnt for us as an organisation about how we do the training and how we explain it. And then we use examples and other training tools to make sure that people learn what is good and what is the best way to handle calls. All of our agents receive training on the technology and training on how to handle calls. They all have daily stand-ups where they get told of the lines to take for anything that's happened that day and any new developments and any new technology that's been released, etc. And we have performance monitoring and the normal appraisal and training processes to make sure that everyone is performing in the contact centre.
So how many complaints have you had regarding inappropriate service from call centre staff?
I do not have that number in front of me, but I can write to you with that specific number.
And what are your current customer satisfaction scores and how do you measure those?
So at the end of every call, we ask for customer satisfaction. For those that answers, they are scored out of 5. They're on an upward trajectory. They are between 1 and 2 out of 5, and they started off between 0 and 1. So we are improving as we go, and we will continue to improve until the service is back in normal service and everyone is getting the things that they need as they come. It will be very hard to have higher satisfaction scores because quite rightly people are asking for their information and for what's going on with their case.
I think the responses we're getting are accurate.
Yes.
They're telling us our service isn't at the standard, and those results are reviewed by me and the PLC board.
And you ask for this at the end of every call. How do you do that?
It's part of the close down of the call.
There's an automated element
like
that
feedback.
says, please stay on the line. So it's not the agent, so there can be no personal pressure to go either way. It's an automatic deflection. Would you stay on the call and use your keypad to punch in numbers?
Are you sure that's working correctly and consistently?
We can. I will double check that for you.
We have nothing
as I
to
mentioned, I am a civil service pensioner, so I've had the pleasure of calling these helplines, and I don't remember being asked my satisfaction, particularly on the 2 occasions when I was told that even though I'd been on the line for nearly 2 hours, the office was now closed. I certainly wasn't asked for my satisfaction at that point, which would have been somewhere below 1.
If I may, we'll come back, because I think it's a very good question. We'll come back with precisely the detail around how that process works, because I'm not sure it applies to every single call we receive, but certainly with a percentage of calls. And also the stages that bit of the technology went live with. It was there on the 1st of December. We'll write a full detailed report on that for you.
So I think what we want in that is not only does it apply to all calls, and then we want to split down of the satisfaction rates. Presumably it's rated 1 to 5 stars or some sort of system like that. Could we have a complete breakdown of the number of calls you're getting each day and the satisfaction rates, so we can see whether the number is declining? Hopefully it is, and we can see what the satisfaction is. Clearly waiting 2 hours and being told the office is closed is probably going to rate you less than 1 star, I guess.
Absolutely, we'll do that.
0 option.
We perhaps ought to have a 0 option. I don't know.
There is.
Yeah. Okay. Are we done, Kat?
Yes, thank
Charlotte, thank you very much. Very, very helpful. Right, we now move on to Catherine, followed by Anna, please.
Thank you. I have to say, I appreciate this is, I would hope, your number one work stream and priority at the moment, you will appreciate that as members of Parliament, we get contacted on such a range of issues. However, this issue is the second biggest issue in my constituency inbox. That's just to give you a sense as, for our constituents, how important and up the priority ladder this issue is. And I know from the stories I've read just from constituents, let alone the work we've done on this committee, the amount of stress, inconvenience and hardship that it is causing for constituents. So I wanted to raise the hardship issue and hardship loans. I have to say from the outset, I take issue with the description of these as hardship, and we'll come to that and what could be potentially done about that. But could you just give us an update on how this hardship loan process is working with the Cabinet Office, and to what extent are you confident that members are receiving any financial support that they need?
Absolutely. So the task force run by the Second Permanent Secretary HMRC, Angela, runs the hardship process for all the departments. So anybody who is a serving civil servant or has been a serving civil servant in the previous 12 months can contact their department directly and get a hardship loan. We are not involved in that process. We're not involved in that. But if someone in that nature rings us, we direct them to the department, and each of the government departments has set up their own process for that. For somebody who is a deferred member who left more than 12 months ago, we look at those cases and we ensure that they are either in receipt of a lump sum very quickly, or that they have access to a hardship fund if that's needed.
And in terms of loans, I mean, did you just describe a hardship? What was the word you just said? Or provider with a hardship? Loan, yeah. So in terms of these loans, how many have Capita issued to date, and what's the total value of these?
So Capita, we have not had to issue any to date. So
you don't issue any, so you don't provide any of the money towards this process?
Please no. For all the members who are more than 12 months deferred, the small number who have contacted us, we have looked at their cases and managed to get them a lump sum immediately.
Would you call that a loan though?
No, that's just loan.
How would you describe that? Just a lump sum payment?
That's how much they owed, yes.
And that requires the process to work out how much they might be owed before any of those payments are made.
Yes, if they then say to us that there's continued problem or that we can't do that for some reason, then we would do a loan if that was needed.
And would you process that as a hardship process in those circumstances? So how do you prioritise those?
We prioritise as people describe their situation to us on the phone, and they self-identify as needing that money. So if they say we need this money, then we put them into the hardship process.
If they say we have no income, we have nothing, we're expecting a pension, we have no income, and they left the civil service over 12 months ago, because some people left the civil service some time ago, they have a civil service pension, but they weren't in the employ of the civil service when they retired. They may be in a position of having no income because they were relying on their civil service pension. If they identify that to the agents will then prioritise that case, and as Chris has described, we get them a lump sum, which is why we're not describing that as a hardship loan. That's a lump sum payment. If they have retired within the last 12 months, then the Cabinet Office team pick that up, they go to the department, and the department pays a hardship loan in order to tide them over till we can get their pension processed.
Okay, so can you give us an update on how many of those are still outstanding in terms of Capita members?
How many loans are still outstanding?
Yeah. How many requests for lump sum payments that have not been paid yet?
So for people that left the civil service prior to 12 months ago?
I don't have today's number. I'll have to write to you with that specific.
Give us a rough estimate?
It's not very many because we prioritise those, and most people who are retiring are current civil servants over the last 12 months, and I think in Kat's letter she details the specific number that the government have issued.
So you're not able to give us a sense at all today of how many people might be awaiting payments still?
So for those who retired from the civil service, or left the civil service over 12 months ago and are saying that they need some money, we don't have the precise number with us, but we believe it to be a very small number, and we'll be able to get you those numbers this afternoon. But there's not a large number requiring those. The majority of the cases, which I think the Permanent Secretary of the Cabinet Office has identified, are coming from the people who are leaving the civil service and therefore need some money to tide them through. And that's that process. That's where the majority of the demand is.
This doesn't quite make sense to me in terms of the evidence that you've given previously in terms of the widows that have been described to you, that been and people have been waiting since October. How, if what you're making it sound like a very efficient process of people self-declaring themselves as in hardship, and you being able to issue them with a lump sum payment, that's the impression you're creating now. So it doesn't make sense when we hear the situation that people are living in.
What we're doing is we're as honest as, with complete honesty, answering the specific question you're answering. I understand what you're saying, which is if somebody has been in receipt, so if somebody's partner was in receipt of a pension and has been for some time, then the bereavement process that we were describing earlier is at that point we need to, the widower will be entitled to an element of pension. That takes an element of calculation, as you would appreciate, and that's the bereavement process that again is in a priority. Now, one of the things, and I spent some time with our team in Sheffield that process this, is that in some cases, and again back to their commitment, they have to elicit in the right way answers from the people calling to try and elicit whether they are in hardship. And the bit that I agree with you about the terminology, I think there's a point of pride about whether you are prepared to say, I'm in hardship. So we don't ever use those words. What we're trying to get out of people is, do you have money? And therefore, if we can ascertain that they don't, we put them into that process to make sure we can get them something. If they don't elicit that and they say we're in need of pension, then we follow that process through. But I'm not trying to obfuscate. I'm trying to be clear about this is a complex area, and we're doing our best to be clear about what we're doing.
I have to say it's not clear. It's not clear at all, because I have some figures here that were, I believe, correct up to 23rd of February 2026, that you received 1,804 hardship cases. 798 of those were from active retirees in the last 12 months, 923 deferred for longer than 12 months, 864 have had a lump sum paid. Now that could be the whole lump sum that they're entitled to, or it could be some of it. I have constituents who've just received some of it, yes, but they keep being told they've had their lump sum, which I think it causes confusion and concern. 375 are at the quote stage, 545 are still being handled because of potential additional information required. So I can give you the figures up until 23rd of February 2026, about a month ago. I'm really surprised you can't give the figure to date, but I'm also probably more confused than at the start of this hearing about what your role is in this, because you're suggesting that there's no problem at the Capita end. The problem is at referring them for hardship loan end. That it makes no sense what you're saying. I'm sorry.
I don't think we're not saying that there's no. So we are trying to make sure that we deal with all of those cases as quickly as possible and get people their money as fast as possible.
Yeah, but how's that going is what I've asked, and you're not able to give me an answer to that.
So we have now. So I think we gave the answer earlier about the lump sums. We've now paid all the lump sums of people whom we have the paperwork and quotes for.
Right. What do you mean by all the paperwork and quotes for?
So everyone who has a valid quote, and we talked about earlier about there's 800 people whom we've written to for further information, and there are 5,000 quotes from before we took over that we are working through those quotes.
Right, okay. So as long as all the information is correct when it comes to you, you'll pay out a lump sum. But obviously that's not going to be the case for quite a lot of people. Therefore, you defer that to the Cabinet Office for a hardship loan?
If they are an active civil servant or left the civil service in the last 12 months.
And so that's around 800 people waiting for that. Did you say?
No, we didn't say that, I think.
800 people who we've asked for paperwork for.
That's literally what I just said to you. So around 800 people who are waiting to process.
But not all of those people have necessarily then gone and said that they would like a loan.
Right, but if they are struggling with hardship, they may refer themselves, yes. Or you will refer them?
We will advise them that they can.
You will advise them to refer themselves?
If they wish.
And then of those that are just simply waiting for a calculation, are you able to give a figure for that? In terms of those left with nothing in the interim?
There are, as I said earlier, there are 5,000 quotations from before we took over that we're still working through.
Right, okay. I have no further questions, but I'm not massively clearer.
Nor am I, but Charlotte, do you wish to come in on this?
Yes, I would. So we heard at the beginning about the gentleman who's terminally ill and isn't yet receiving regular payments, and some widows who are not receiving. Why are they having to come up with the magic words to ask for a loan? Why don't you automatically offer them a loan?
They're not giving loans.
So we when we talk to them, they'll be informed that they can have a loan if they would. Most people don't ask for a loan. Most people will ask to get their case processed, and most of those people we've got a lump sum to as fast as possible.
And I hear that, but in that case, you're not able to do it in those 3 cases we heard. So why don't you simply say, we are sorry it is taking us so long to resolve this properly. We are working as fast as we can. In the meantime, we would like to offer you a loan to until we sort this out. Why are you not just offering it to them, making it, as it were, their right? Because they are owed that money.
Okay, so we are absolutely. So we will look into exactly the wording that we're using in the context.
Rather than stuttering this morning, you can hear the committee's extreme concern about this issue, particularly the people who are recently bereaved and those who are terminally ill. I would have thought in either case, if you've got the relevant piece of paper, either the death certificate or the doctor's certificate, it would be possible to offer them an immediate loan, which would probably be less than their lump sum payment or their due entitlement, but at least you would get something out there quite quickly. So could you take that away?
Yes,
I don't want an answer today. I'd rather have a firm answer on all this subject, because these are really sensitive cases of people in a very difficult time in their life.
Chair, my apologies. Could I also just put on the record that I think, rather than talking in terms of hardship, which is welcome that you don't, and I don't think anyone should, because actually this is about money that is not paid to people that are owed it. Therefore, if you make a payment, and I would very hope you do go away and look at it, it's an advance. It's not a loan. You are not loaning people money or bailing them out. This is money that they are owed, and you are, in the absence of having what is needed to pay that from your end officially, you are going to advance them a sum so that they can get on with their lives.
Yes, agreed. Again, we're doing this in partnership. Those words weren't designed to be used externally. It's an internal set of terms, because I agree with you entirely. To the point about why don't we, what we're operating at the moment is the processes that we've jointly agreed. We'll absolutely take that away. That's a perfectly reasonable, acceptable thing, and we'll absolutely do that and come back.
That's really helpful. Let's have a note on that, Richard, please. So we'll now take a break for 5 minutes. Would members of the public please leave? Don't worry, you will be invited back in again shortly when we resume. So thank you for all your forbearance this morning. The clock is now at 11:20. If we could be back at 11:25 fairly promptly, because we've still got quite a lot to go through. So Clive Betts, please.
Right. To Mr. Clements, Mr. Holroyd. Probably wish you weren't back here. I think we do as well. That things had actually improved since your last visit. But perhaps you read the what happened on the 12th of February, the report of that meeting, where at that stage you were making commitments to have all these problems sorted out by the end of March. What went wrong?
Yes, I think I'm very conscious there are a set of dates been moving around, and what I committed to, or I believed I was committing to when I answered your question, was that we would have all those key areas that we were dealing with, which was on bereavement, on death in service, etc., dealt with by the end of March, and we would have the technology up and running by the end of March. I absolutely understand, having read the report afterwards, that what you took my answer to be was that all service levels and we'd be into absolutely normal running. And I apologise if in any way I created the wrong impression or misled the committee.
I think you created the right impressions at the time. It just turned out to be wrong since.
Yes, I answered in good faith about the question I thought I was answering.
Okay, look, you told us that you didn't anticipate the scale of complexity of all the cases that you inherited in December. But when you talked to us in February, you then had all the information that you needed for 2.5 months. So why weren't you aware of the situation? Why did you come and make promises about having everything been sorted by the end of March, when you clearly knew what the information was then?
Yeah, back to my point, which is I answered in good faith the question I thought you were asking, which was about the where we were on the critical lines of inquiry around widows, bereavements, death in service, the tragic cases we were dealing with. And we had agreed with the Cabinet Office a programme plan to complete by the end of March, and it was that on which I was answering the question. Now I'm going to repeat my point, which is that I subsequently discovered that had been interpreted in a different way. I obviously didn't answer the question that you asked, and for that I apologise. Did I know that it would take us beyond March in order to get absolutely to the normal jogging? I absolutely did, and for that I apologise if I misled you.
You did say we have committed date to return to SLAs by the end of March. It seems pretty clear.
Yes, and again, it was on those elements I was talking about. But you're right. Your point is correct, and I accept it.
Right. So the commitment that you've made today, everything sorted by the end of June, is that a firmer commitment than when you talked to us previously about in March?
It is. I'm very clear about the question, and I'm very clear in my answer. And I know a plan is a plan, but we have a plan. We've been executing on the plan. That plan involved clearing those key lines that I described by the end of March and launching the various technology, and we have done those things. And I believe in all good faith that the rest of the plan is going to land absolutely in line with expectation.
Make sure we're absolutely clear. It might be very helpful if you then write to the committee and clearly set out all the things that will be done by each date that you're now committed to.
I'm very happy to do that.
I have a couple of points. We talked about MCLoud cases before. They are complicated. I think we all know they're complicated. The pension scheme you're in. We talked. I raised the case of a MCLoud pensioner who had all their paperwork in back in September, and you were saying it would be June before you dealt with those cases. What about the cases of the MCLoud pensioners who hadn't got all their information into agreed or into the system with the previous pension providers by September last year? There's a lot of them as well around, aren't there? When will you have actually dealt with their cases?
So there are around 100,000 cases where the previous administrator hadn't started the MCLoud work. we are currently working with Cabinet Office on a plan and a separate engagement to the main administration contract to get those resolved by the MCLoud deadline of Q1 2027.
When, sorry?
Next April.
Next April. Right. When you say the MCLoud deadline,
That's the government's...
is there no detriment to any of those pensioners?
That's what we're working through with Cabinet Office.
And I think, that, as you said, it's the deadline that the government has set on all departments and all of us to have that all cleared by. Obviously, we're not working to a basis that we're not doing it until then. We're absolutely working to a plan to get those chewed through before that deadline.
Have you any way of identifying whether there are some cases within that 100,000 that might be more of a priority than others?
Yeah, we will prioritise those cases. Those are the cases that the previous administrator didn't start. There are also cases, as you described, which are current work in progress cases, and we're also working with Cabinet Office on a separate plan to ensure that they are...
I think your specific question is, are we able to go through those
Yes.
to identify where people have greater need or hardship? I think that's something we'll have to take away and come back to you with.
Well, I think we need a note about that.
Yes.
Just to deal with the ones that were already in train by June, the others by April next year, but to look at whether you can prioritise any that need prioritising in the meantime.
Yes.
Let us know about that.
Yep.
Right. Just one other point, if I just may, is this issue that I raised about the case of the person who was terminally ill, that I raised right at the beginning, the quite awful case, and of Mr. Fenny. Is this phrase, and it comes up apparently over and over again, this case will be escalated. What happens to a case that's escalated when someone phones up and is told that?
So the person who's speaking to them on the phone will then send it to their team leader, who will then look at that case, who will then send it to the ops manager, and then there is a escalations team who look at the case and ensure that we're prioritising.
Quite a lot of steps to get to someone who can make a decision.
The steps are simply just, the first step is the escalation. What's the nature of the escalation and where should it go, and then the second step is what do we do about that escalation?
I think the point you're getting at is there's an escalation manager who looks over the list of escalations, and then, as you can imagine, we're getting a lot of escalations at the moment, and then prioritises the escalations to try and get the most crucial ones dealt with fastest. And I've been up to Sheffield and sat amongst the teams and watched them following this process, and with the detail they have, they literally will move things up in order to try and get the right outcome.
Without any doubt, we're not in any way criticising the people doing the work.
No, I understand, yes. Yeah.
They clearly have got a difficult job as well. Just say, so when people phone back in a month's time and get told it's been escalated, when they've already been told it's been escalated, that basically means nothing's happened before.
Yeah, and I recognise that. So the frontline staffs at the moment can see that it has been escalated, and they escalate it again. And in fact, you can, in some cases, go and see that a case has been escalated several times. So there's one I looked at when I was with the teams, where somebody had escalated several times because their tax code needed to change, and they disagreed with the tax code that they'd been given. And of course, part of the issue that we have is trying to unpick those escalations that are not at the top priority level with the escalations that are at the top priority level. So if a member and I understand why they would, and I wouldn't want them to do otherwise, keep saying, but you haven't done it yet. They're right, we haven't sorted the tax code yet because we've been trying to sort out somebody
Any feedback to people?
Sorry?
When someone phones up and is told it was escalated, is there any feedback about what happens then?
In some cases, and again, you sit with this. I'm trying to bring it to life. So you sit with the screen, and the agent will tell the person on the other end of the phone everything that they can see, and they'll say it's been escalated at this date. It's with the escalations team, and we do give feedback on where that process is, and in cases where we know that it's a low priority, we will say this isn't in the top priority list right now. So somebody who's asking,
people get told that.
yes, and then but the piece that I totally
Getting a lot of shaking heads behind you.
well, I spoke to some of the people behind us this morning because I think they've all got incredibly valid cases. In some of those cases, the complexity of what they are asking about means that there are several bits of data and information, and that's harder for the frontline staff to answer. And in those cases, it will be incredibly frustrating because they will be told it's with the escalations team. And I spoke to a gentleman this morning that said you'll get a payment, and he's very frustrated that he hasn't received that payment. And I understand why, because we're not moving that fast enough for him, and we're not running it at the right pace either.
Look, it doesn't seem to me the feedback is particularly helpful in many cases. And in the case of the tax codes, if you don't see those as a priority, wouldn't it be easy just to say to someone on the phone, I'm sorry, your case isn't a priority, you won't be dealing with it for the next 2 or 3 months. It will stop them phoning back all the time.
And we do, and I again, you would appreciate that in order to make sure we're absolutely prioritising this, I've been sat with a headset on and listened to the calls and listened to people being told who are asking for a benefit statement, and being told we're unable to give you a benefit statement and we won't be processing benefit statements until. So and we give dates for those. So we are doing that. What I totally understand is if you want a benefit statement and you want it now, then being told you're not going to get it for another 2 or 3 months is not an acceptable service. And we completely agree. And I sit nodding with when I hear the frustration coming from the caller.
So people don't have to wait then. And keep pushing you to say what's happening. You actually proactively go to people and tell them where things are up to, do you?
So they will. If you call them, the call handler will be able to see on the screen and tell. There's also, as we promised for the end of March technology, the Track My Case feature is now live on the portal, so members can log on and see where their case is using the Track My Case feature. We've had over 22,000 people have logged on to check their case.
I'm sorry, your case will not be dealt with as a priority.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It wouldn't be helpful to do that.
Go on.
What it does say is it explains some of the prioritizations that we do. So it says your case is being handled, what stage your case is at, and then below it gives it gives lists of those cases that are not priorities.
I just say to someone, we've got the information we need from you, but because it's like a tax code or something, this is not going to be dealt with as a priority. There will be a wait. Why don't you just tell people that?
We will look at how we describe it, but at the moment it says what the messages are as to what cases are being prioritised.
Yes.
So it tries to explains the status of the operation.
So it does explain these are the nons not being prioritised. Whether it's specific enough, we will take away.
Okay.
But if I may, the intention is to increase the functionality in that Track My Case, because what we recognise is at the moment it says this is where we're up to with your case. What we'll be looking to do is to break that down into further steps so that people with ever more granularity will be able to see where it is.
I want to be really clear about this recovery plan by the end of June, and I want to quote to you the actual words on this from Cat Little on this published letter on the 24th of March. It says, "My clear expectation is that all core pension functions, including new retirement processing and quotations, return to standard contractual levels by the end of June 2026. Do you agree with that, and will it happen?
I do agree, and that is what is going to happen.
That is what is going to happen.
Yes.
Thank you. We go next to Charlotte, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Holroyd, you told this committee in November 2025 that the new portal website would be ready for go live on the 1st of December. Why is it still not functional for all members 4 months into your administration?
Sorry, I didn't appear in a committee in November. Could you ask me that again?
Oh, sorry. This committee was told in November that the new portal website would be ready for go live on the 1st of December. It still isn't fully functioning for everybody 4 months later. Why not?
So the portal, as you say, went live on the 1st of December. The additional features that we just talked about, Track My Case, and the AI chatbot went live last week as planned at the end of March. It is available to all members with the exception of the multi-stint members. As we've discussed, there was been a problem in the data as to how that works. That fix is gone in this week, so it will now be available for all 1.7 million members rather than the 1.6 million members who aren't multi-stinters this week, with all the features and all the functions that were promised in the original, as per the original plan, to get the end of March features live.
So that's the technology plan agreed with the Cabinet Office. I think what you're referring to is that when we went live on the 1st of December, there were some teething issues with the portal, and in fact in this committee on the 12th of February we did talk about even to the degree of moving buttons so they were more visible for people to be able to register questions. But that portal went live on the 1st of December, but additional functionality has been delivered since, and we have the numbers available for how many people are using that portal.
So how many people are using it?
So we've had 1.3 million visits to the website, and there are 250,000 members registered.
And what number were you expecting 4 months into?
So that is where we were expecting to be. I expect that as we get through to the end of the tax year, that's when pensioners tend, so most of our registrations so far are active and deferred members. So as we get through to the end of the tax year, pensioners will register, and that number will increase significantly.
So it's in line.
But it's
the short answer is it's in line with
where we
expectation.
expected, yeah.
So have you done any testing to ensure that absolutely everyone can now get on it?
So, yes, we have, and as I said, there's one small group of people with the multi-stint data problem. That fix goes into the website this week.
So they still can't access it.
It will be tomorrow that it'll go in tomorrow.
And multi-stint, that's people who left the scheme partway
rejoined
through service and then came back in again.
And there's 122,000 of those.
And those people have, up until this stage, until tomorrow, have never been able to get all their pension detail in one place. So that was part of the additional functionality that we contracted to deliver. And we were very clear that wasn't available on the 1st of December because it takes the move of the data into our systems and then the ability to merge that data to create that portal.
I'm interested in what testing you've done, because I had a constituent who is now on the portal, but I was regularly told he can get on it, ask him to try again, and he couldn't. And it turned out to be because he had an asterisk in his name and how you did that. So are you absolutely certain?
If I may, in that case, that's not a case of the portal not working. Most portals won't accept symbols like asterisks because they have software meaning.
Well, it wasn't working for him, and your staff knew he had an asterisk in his name, so if there was an issue with how he had to enter his name, he should have been told. That should be clearly in the instructions.
Well, yes, I think again, we could take that away and look at it in more detail, but again, if the staff had identified that, because you can imagine there's a screen, if they'd been and looked to understand what his email address was that he was using as his log-on, people can select their log-on, and there are a set of instructions that say what the log-on should look like. We'll go again and re-look to make sure that what we're saying is correct. But like most portals, most portals won't take a variety of symbols.
I understand that.
I'm just drawing it because there's a difference between the portal not working and somebody selecting a log-on that the portal can't accept.
Okay, if we move to another example, you said multi-stint is people who left the scheme for a period and then came back into the scheme. Okay, so as I said at the beginning, I'm a civil service pensioner. I have tried several times to log on to the portal, register with the portal, as of last night was my last attempt, still failed. I do not fall into that category. Now, I'm only one person, but how many of the other over 1 million people who have access to this portal in theory but haven't logged on yet, how many of those are still not able to because there's a problem with the system? What happened last night, just so you know, I got to the point where you have to set your password, and I was bumped into the home page of your website. And I tried several times, and when I tried to read it, of course, it told me that I'd already put that email in, so it wouldn't let me use it. So I'm not concerned about me. I'll sort myself out in due course, but it does show that it's not correct, that it's only multi-stinters who can't access the portal.
I'm sorry to hear about the issues you had yesterday. We provided
it's an example.
Yes, and we've provided the data of the people who are using the portal and active on it now. We will take away from here and go and identify, because you imagine we don't have all the data on everything with us, and identify, and we should be able to identify those people who are attempting to log on who aren't being successful. And we will pull that data off and we'll again provide that to you.
It would be very interesting to see that data. There's still not all the data on there. That's all meant to be on by the end of March, is it? All the functionality?
So functionality, yes. So the last bits of functionality. So the modeler goes live this weekend. As I said, the multi-stint, the track my case and the chatbot went live last week. The benefit statements for 2025 that MyCSP didn't hand over to us, that they're now all there. I think, as we communicated previously, for more historic benefit statements that weren't handed to us, we are recreating those after the 2026 ones are produced. For the service and other items, the data is there. As we've talked about before, that there are inherited errors in those data, so if someone identifies some data on the portal that's not right, it may be an inherited error, and there is a contact us form to tell us of that, and we will get it sorted, and we have a process to go through to sort all that inherited data. But the all of the features will be live at the end of March. Yes.
So I'm told by a constituent that they wanted to make a lump sum payment, and on the previous portal they were able to do that online. On the new one they had to download a form, print it out, fill it out, scan it back in again or post it. Was that a temporary workaround, or is that now how that's going to work going forward?
So that is one of the things that's on our continuous improvement plan, to improve more and more features to be straight through on the portal.
Thank you, Chair.
So I understand that the CSP site at the moment has a note on it saying you'll be unable to access both our member and employee portals from 8:45 on Saturday, 28th of March, due to essential maintenance. This service will be offline till Sunday evening. We apologise for any inconvenience this may cause. Now, is this because you are adding a whole lot of functionality, getting ready for having everything ready by the end of March?
That is the final drop of fixes and features.
Yes.
For March.
So what concerns me now here is that people will be listening to this hearing today. There's only 250,000 on the portal at the moment out of a total of 1.7 million members. If everybody starts logging on Monday, for example, is the whole thing going to crash?
So the portal is hosted by Microsoft and is all built on scalable cloud technology. So it is all tested to receive the volumes of those people.
So it's designed
not to crash.
And you'll understand we regret that we're having.
Which website is designed to crash?
Well,
I mean, just to be serious, and I understand my colleagues' exasperation, I think, rather than mirth over this. Exasperation, I think, is the word. Can we be assured that any scheme member from Monday will be able to log onto the portal and see where their case is?
Any scheme member will be able to log on to the portal and will be able to look at the Track My Case and be able to see their data.
Right, really helpful. Okay, let us move on now, please.
Me now, Chair.
Yes, indeed, Catherine. Yes, of course. How did I possibly forget you?
So we obviously had the update that the HMRC is providing surge capacity in order to assist Capita in reaching the outcomes that have been committed to in March. Oh, well, that's now. How's that going? And how long do you... Are you still requiring the HMRC surge support? And to what extent? And how has that been? Has that been helpful?
Yes, we cannot emphasise enough how the joint working with the second Permanent Secretary from the HMRC, Angela MacDonald, and her surge team have been. As I say, a lot of this process involves going to departments of state back and forth to pull out data, and they've been absolutely essential in helping us with that and helping us focus the plan and the plan of record that we talked about earlier. So the surge capacity remains in place. We are in constant dialogue with that team, and it continues to operate and as described.
Okay, thank you. So could you be more specific in terms of how it's operating? So how many full-time staff, for example, are working on the scheme? How many HMRC staff does that include? And are you adding surge capacity from the Capita end as well?
So we transferred 330 people from my CSP. We recruited additional staff so that on Go Live we had 500 staff. When we identified the additional problems, we then surged 150 Capita staff to match the 150 HMRC staff. So that is a total of 700 staff. My maths degree, sorry, failed me for a second there. We are now working every day with the team to work out how those are deployed. The thing that's important to understand is that in a scheme and an administration like this, there are lots of very, very different roles. So there are contact centre, there are administrative tasks, and then there are the highly complicated, high-skilled senior pension administration staff. And we have worked closely with Angela and her team to ensure that the surge staff are doing jobs that allow the senior pensions administrators to be released to do the complicated work. And so it is a constant balance about getting everyone doing the most effective work to get through the work. As Richard said, we will not withdraw any Capita staff at any point until the service is back into full function. We are constantly reviewing with Angela about what the HMRC surge team are doing and when those could be returned to the government without any detriment to the members.
Do you have a sense of expectation in terms of the time frame that they'll still be required?
So we will start to be able to we will continually review this, but my view is that at the end of April we should be able to start releasing them without any impact to the plan, but that is going to be constantly kept under review and constantly be looked at. And what's important to understand is that it is not a single homogenous service. There's so many different parts to it and so many different skill sets. We have to balance all those different skill sets. And obviously some of those skill sets don't come from the surge. Some of those skill sets only come from the pensions experts.
So the decision on when to withdraw the HMRC surge staff is one for the Cabinet Office and Angela, and we, of course, as I think the Permanent Secretary reflects, have daily conversations. We're very conscious that those civil servants may be required elsewhere, and therefore we will be working hard to help and aid their release at the earliest possible opportunity. But you would understand that can't be our decision. But what we can do is make sure we're throwing everything in there to allow them to be released.
Yeah, and to meet your contractual expectations that would enable that.
Yes, I mean, we have a contractual requirements to meet, in addition.
I think just to clarify this, I mean, we really, really want this, as I read out earlier, those categories put back on an even keel by the end of June, and then we want the service going forward to work properly.
Yes.
So you must have an idea as to how many permanent staff you're likely to need on this scheme going forward. What is it?
So and we've discussed this, and I feel that, and the Capita board agree, that right now it's not the right activity on our part to start figuring out when we might start scaling back.
You did just hint at that in your previous answer.
What I referred to was with civil service staff, because we recognise they've come in as a surge to support, and therefore the first priority is releasing the civil servants back as part of their scheme. The direction that I have is that we will not release one single Capita paid for member of staff until the service is up and running. And I won't countenance at the moment discussions about when we might release, because that's not the right focus right now. The right focus is restoring service.
Not only restoring service, but my question actually did cover running it as to per the contract going forward. We want to see a perfectly run service with after June.
I agree. My use of the word restore service means it's running not just per contract, but as per expectation. And the reason I'm differentiating between the two is because in this case, it would be too easy to point at KPIs and say we're all good. When we have scheme members that we talked about with their net promoter score numbers that we're collecting, if they're all in the wrong place, then we need to be working to make sure the service is at the standard they expect.
Get that. I'm sorry to labour this point about my previous question about the performance of the portal, because there is still out there a huge difference in the actual data that you've got. Now, when you came before us, you said that you've got 20,000 lines of corrupted data. The Cabinet Office seemed to think it's 1,000, or my CSP seemed to think it was 1,000. What is the position with corrupted data?
Yes, I think they, just referring back to the Permanent Secretary's letter, I think they refer to 1 million rather than 1,000.
Or 1 million. I do apologise. You are quite right. I'm looking at that very figure now.
There are an awful lot of figures flying around.
Yeah.
And I think we wrote after the last committee, or in fact we didn't on this subject. So we inherited 20 million lines, and we used the phrase corrupt data,
yes.
By which we meant data that had errors in it that need to be changed. And we've had a discussion with the Cabinet Office about the use of that term, because some might mean that it's unreadable data. The data is readable, but it's got errors in it. So, for example, we've identified places where a member of the pension scheme is deceased without a dependent due to receive pension, but has still be being paid the pension. So that's an example of where we've got lines of data that isn't correct, and therefore it's a subject we continue to work with the Cabinet Office to resolve.
Richard, I'm sorry to be boring about this, but you did, in our answers a few minutes ago, said that the whole thing will be up and running by the end of March. But it can't be functioning properly until this problem of data is sorted out, can it?
Well, and that is one of the major project lines that we're working on, which is to resolve data. And Chris will pick this up because this is his area of expertise, but to use a live example that I went through the other day, if you're running a payroll which runs the payments to the pension receivers, and there are 8,000 data errors in there, that means that those pensioners are maybe receiving too little pension, or it may be going to the wrong bank account, or the wrong address for the pension support slips, etc., etc. So you're absolutely right. Getting that data absolutely clean and clear is really important to make sure nobody is either being overpaid or underpaid. And so the point of issue that we have at the moment, and we're working through, is we need to clean that data. Now, some of that data will have minor errors in it that aren't showstoppers, and other have bigger data error, which is why we're referring to it as 20 million lines of data errors, and we've been cleared up this because of the definition of what corruption means. But that's where we are. But that's a clear line to solve, and there was a workshop just last Monday with the second permanent secretary in there working through those elements.
So, because of this problem, you can't absolutely be certain that any one of your 1.7 million members can log onto the portal and get a true update of where their case is, because you might have one of those. I
think there's a difference between where their case is and whether the data line.
Yeah, so if I may, the data errors are in the standing data for the member. So this is your service record, your date of birth, your address, your name, etc. Every time we receive a new case, the first thing we do is we data triage it to check whether one of those data errors is in your case and whether it will impact your case. At the moment, since we took over, 70% of cases have required a fix in data triage. So in answer to your question, you can run a normal service with an underlying data error if you build in a step to fix that error before it goes into a case that needs to be worked. The case, so if you're going on to look at the case, the individual cases that have been created, they have already gone through that triage, so that therefore they're in they exist on the portal with the data relevant to them. It is the underlying member data where the errors lie, and we deal with that in the triage process.
So I've now received additional information. Apparently there's a notice on your portal which says requests about pension benefit statements lead to a message saying please try after the 31st of March. Historic statements will be continued to be loaded throughout 2026. So when are they all going to be resolved?
So this is, as I mentioned earlier, so when we inherited the service from ICSP, they did not transfer the benefit statements. They transferred a list of details that we had to turn into benefit statements. We agreed with the Cabinet Office that the 2025 benefit statements will be produced before the end of March. They are being done so, and they're being loaded on over the last few weeks, and they will all be there at the end of March. We will then do the 2026 benefit statements, so that's our responsibility to process those end-of-year statements, and then once we've done that, we'll then go back and do the 2024, 2023 statements that we didn't receive from ICSP, and we agreed that as part of the original plan with Cabinet Office.
So how long somebody's been waiting since 2023 for a statement?
No, so they received those statements from MyCSP. MyCSP produced those statements, so they received a paper copy from MyCSP. But when we inherited the data, MyCSP didn't give us those statements, so we can't put them on the thing. They gave us a spreadsheet.
It's the difference with them being on the portal versus what they've received. So I'm a member of the Armed Forces Pension Scheme. I get a benefit statement every year for my Armed Forces pension. I get it in the post. But if I wanted to go on a portal to get that benefit statement, what Chris is describing is the historic ones for 2023-24 weren't transferred to us. We have to create those. So it isn't a case that the members never had it, but they may have not have it to hand, may have mislaid it. Therefore, they're looking for the historic one, and that's what we're having to rebuild.
Terrible situation. So somebody's expecting a statement in 2023. How long is it going to take them to get an updated one? Because a lot of that information may well be out of date. You may need a completely
But a benefit statement is for a point in time.
Yeah. So they'll have their 2025 benefit statement and their 2026 benefit statement. So they'll have their most up-to-date ones. It's only the historic records that they would have had the paper copy, so it's only the historic records that we're having to recreate.
It's like a bank statement. It tells you.
Okay. But I mean, those people would have an expectation that you would be able to reproduce those statements, and when will that all be resolved?
So that will all be resolved once we've done the 2026 ones. We will then use the same resource to look at them.
What I'm asking is, how long will it take to get the result?
September.
Okay. Anna, please.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. So it was just occurring to me, having filled out my own tax return, that you do need the previous 4 years of pension statements in order to be able to calculate and I'm hoping that you will have it in place so people won't be delayed in submitting their accurate self-assessments.
Certainly that's our expectation, but I'll just reiterate, that will have been sent to them previously.
Yeah, but if they've lost a copy.
But yes, if there's filing systems like mine, they may well need to go and look it up on a portal.
So when we've met you before, we've obviously held up a lot about automation, AI, and this is sort of part of the efficiencies that were going to be in this contract that you signed with the Cabinet Office. I think in answer to Charlotte's question, you said that all of the AI and automation features now in place since last week.
On the portal. Yes, the AI chatbot on the portal went live last week.
Oh, the AI on the chatbot. So other automation and AI features that you were expecting to implement, have they, by the end of March, have they also been done?
So all of the member items, so all the member portal stuff is done. The AI that we use in our back office is in, and we are working on it, and we are improving it and continuously improving it and continuously improving the automation of the calculations. But they changed the handling times. So we talked about going from like 1 hour to 5 hours or 8 hours. They're not experiential to the member. They're not part of the member experience on the portal.
No, but they're very critical to your staffing, your efficiency, and the accuracy, indeed, of your work. So those features, you sort of say they're in, you're improving them. Have you actually fully deployed the AI and automation technology that you expected?
We have fully deployed all of the. We've fully deployed calculations on all of the calculations, and we are testing all of those. We will always continue to improve, and we will forever improve them and get them better. That will never stop. So there's no point in time.
So as I'm sure you know, AI learns and it continues to learn.
Yeah.
So as we deploy,
rubbish, isn't it?
Yes, as we've deployed. So hence we're deploying it. We're testing it and learning. The AI is testing and learning. So what we're seeing is the actual handling time for some of the tasks is improving. One of the reasons why we're now eating through ever more cases is that we're able to bring more of that technology to bear. So some of the actual handling times that were in a couple of hours are starting to reduce. That's one of the reasons of the confidence of the plan by the end of June. So, but yes, it's deployed and we will continue to deploy more.
And are there any things that you're still having to do manually? I mean, you talked about uploading benefit statements. I mean, where are you having to do heavy lifting that you hadn't expected to do?
So the biggest area where we're having to do heavy lifting that we're expected to do is in the quotations. So the way that we're pulling together the complex quotes with people with many different services and many different sets of rules. We are, but to be clear, we are continuing to develop that, and we are continuing to push that, and that process of improvement will continue for a very long time as we go through this contract.
So I've been on, I'm not a pensions expert, so I've been on a learning journey. It's been quite a fast one. So going through the process, you can see there are manual pieces, but and they are experts are operating between various different departments, various different bits of information that are provided by the pension scheme member, and those are manual right now. As we're able to deploy more AI, we'll be able to ingest that data. So instead of having to upload some of that data manually and to do cross-checks, I'm using my finger because that's my age, we're able to bring that together. And I saw some pilot trials the other day as we're bringing some of this together that were showing the ability to do things in bulk. So where you have a basic requirement like address changes, you can load them all and they'll all be done in bulk, which again will just take the pressure off, which will also allow the pension scheme experts to spend more time on the complex cases. And that's where we're focused.
So given that was your plan to use AI, how far off are you being at yours? I realise that you will always improve it, but, full rollout of your functionality.
So the plan of record around deployment of what Chris described as the experiential things, so those things that the the
I
member
understand
gets.
that are in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Internally, we've delivered most of the planned AI, but as I say, it learns and develops the nature of the technology. But also, we're behind to a degree because, of course, as we've described, the volume of what we received meant that the wrong thing to do was to start driving that how we deploy technology. We needed to create enough of an air gap to be able to start moving teams onto training on the new tech. Right. And we've reached that point that the teams are able to be now trained on the new technology. It's that classic pivot moment where you've got enough under control to be able to start to launch new technology, to train people on the new technology and then get the benefits.
Thank you. So you've gone slower, but you are starting to deploy.
Yeah, and it's speeding as we go.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you. Clive, please.
Looking forward, you've been given another contract, the shared services contract. I think the PCS union, amongst others, have expressed some concern that given your performance on the civil service pensions contract, you've been given another one until you sorted that one out.
Yes. I met with the Permanent Secretary for the Department of Work and Pensions and with the Director General that is overseeing that and the team that sits beneath it. We have worked through all the lessons learned that have come from this contract mobilisation and transition. And we have an active plan to ensure there isn't a repetition of those sorts of activities. So particularly pieces around ensuring data quality, detailed pieces of work, understanding what the backlog may be. I mean, the backlog in that space would be very, very different to this. It's a very different style of contract, very different style of services. And we have pulled together a charter that we're going to work together to sign to ensure that all parties, because all these things are always a joint effort around the current incumbent, in this case it's 4 departments of state, ourselves, to make sure that we're working in lockstep. On the 1st of April, we have a joint session between all the parties to work through this and understand the priorities as we go. So there are lessons to learn in this. I might add that we run many hundreds of government contracts, and we are measured by the Cabinet Office on, I think it is 47, again, I've got a day of lots of numbers, 57 contracts where our KPIs are running at 95%. So again, to show that we're in good shape, and I can go into detail on the ones that aren't.
When does this new contract begin?
We are 18 months or so before it goes live.
So, similar time to the time you had before you began the civil service pension scheme, you had that time to understand what was happening with that scheme, analyse the backlogs and the processes. Why would we be convinced that the same amount of time you're going to have now to do the shared services scheme will be better used than it has been on the pension, on civil service pension?
Well, again, I would point to success elsewhere. As I said before, we have lots of lessons that we would need to learn
So
on
what
here.
lessons in particular that show that you perhaps got things wrong on the civil service pension scheme and can get them right now?
Yes, I think I just described. I mean, we talk about the data issue. We talk about the age of the backlog. Now, what we're going to run in Synergy is a very different style of contract to here. So, for example, payroll's involved. Capita, my division of Capita already runs payroll for 40-odd thousand public servants elsewhere. So in terms of that process, and of course in terms of payroll, we went live with the first payroll on this scheme before the 1st of December because it was a requirement, and we paid out, I think it was 1.7 billion of pension payments. So when we go to evidence around the ability to deliver on the nature of that contract, we have a extremely good track record, and it's one of the things that went extremely well here, and we did it before contract start date. So we've been working with, as I say, the team from Synergy to go through each of those elements of the points of stress here, the lessons learned, and lessons learned to date. And I think when I was here last time, I described the fact that it's really important, I think, for all parties to go back and examine in detail the lessons learned here to prevent repetition.
Telling us about lessons learned. Which lessons have you learned specifically?
I think we said at the start today, getting to the detail about the aged backlog. And again, the complexity of this scheme and the complexity that sat within it. And we asked several times what the numbers were, and we got various numbers, but what was clear is they are higher than the 37,000, and I accept that. But what it didn't say was there are this many that are aged for 3 years.
You've asked those questions.
And we did ask those questions.
You didn't get correct answers.
We didn't get the level of detail that we needed, because if we had, then although we put 100 plus additional staff in, we'd have put more than that number of
You didn't
staff.
get the level of detail. How specific were the questions you asked?
We can send you the
It'd
documentation.
be helpful.
I think we definitely like to see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you asked questions and you effectively were misled.
It's not for me to say that anybody was actively misleading us.
I didn't use the word active, I just said misled.
Well, there's a piece of me about integrity because I just don't believe in saying you misled me. What I believe in, and I've met the team, the my CSP team, who are the people who operated it, they were really acting in good faith. Whether the blunt fact is we didn't get the level of detail that we were asking for, and we asked for it on a number of occasions, and we raised it in meetings.
So you're really saying the people who were given it either deliberately misled you or were incompetent, one or the other?
Perhaps.
So I think just before we leave this, I mean, just to put on the record what this is all about. I mean, this is a £700 million contract. So it's a big contract. It sits within the Synergy Shared Service cluster as part of a wider strategy to collapse 286 legacy systems into 5 major platforms through a single cloud-based Oracle Enterprise Resource Planning System, which covers HR, payroll, finance, and procurement. So this is a massive project. Can we be absolutely assured, because most companies, and indeed the public sector, are very short of digital specialists, that no digital specialists will be withdrawn from the civil service pension until the software and the hardware are up and running properly?
Yes, and if I may, on the detail of that, what you described was the full load of Synergy. We are not contracted to deliver the base technology elements of that. We are contracted to run the services over the top. They are 2 separate bits of the contract. And therefore, what I described earlier is the importance of all those elements coming together to ensure a successful service. In terms of the commitment, absolutely. We have named resources that are committed to that contract. We have shared the names of those resources with the department. Those resources are not deployed on this contract. The department has met a number of those people, and again, there is a total separation between the two.
Thank you very much. Rachel Gilmore, please.
This committee is called the Public Accounts Committee. For a moment, I'd like you to think of it as the Public Accountability Committee. I noticed that you have been in the Army for 20 years, which is something I have great respect for as a sister of 2 Army officers. Sitting behind you is a gentleman who is a retired member of the senior service, and he and his colleagues have been consistently shaking their heads at practically every word you had said. Going back to the point of integrity and accountability, have you ever thought of falling on your sword?
Yes, is the honest answer.
Good.
So, and if I may, I think the gentleman, because I spoke to him earlier, is a member, served in the Customs and Excise.
Oh, well, never mind.
And we've talked in some detail about his case, and I totally understand why he feels that way, and he's right. So, and as to falling on my sword, that frankly would be the easy way out. So what my commitment is, after a career of delivering for the citizens of the UK, is to work hard to make sure we get this service back in the right place. And I'm sure you'd agree that's the right thing to do, rather than to opt for, frankly, turning to the left and leaving it to others.
I would find it very difficult to have a conscience which has been so traumatised as yours.
We are, and I speak here for the PLC board too, we are traumatised by the service that the members of the pension scheme are receiving.
One final question, Mark. So we've asked a certain amount of information this morning, and it's all on the record, so we will go through that and make sure that you do supply it, please. Could we, in addition to that, ask for, you've got 3 months between now and the end of June, can we have a progress report on every single category at the end of April, at the end of May, and at the end of June, so we don't read it in the press that something's going wrong. We know it from you, if it's with complete candour, whether it's up to speed or whether it isn't, and then at least we know what's going on. If I could have that, I'd be really grateful.
Absolutely. We came to this committee to be utterly transparent and honest about where we are. That is exactly what we're seeking to do. We have no issues at all with providing the data you're asking for, because we're back to, only by being honest and straight will we get this back to where the service should be.
I think that's the sort of integrity that Rachel was referring to. So I do thank you for that and your candour today. We will look forward and hopefully it all goes as you've told us it will. It's been a long session and we will look at your evidence very carefully, but we do thank you both very much. Now, an uncorrected version of the transcript will be available in the next few days, which obviously you want to look at. We will consider very carefully your evidence and what follow-up action we may wish to take. And so we hope not to have to see you too soon in the future, with the best will in the world, because that means that things are beginning to go right. We now have a slightly alteration to our normal procedure, please. Before I call order, I would like, please, members of the public to leave, the witnesses to stay, but members of the public leave. So order, please.